and that'll be on our website after this, so you might get a notification on your screen just saying that it's recording. So please just accept that. So welcome to the ISSU Running for Election webinar. My name is Emer. I'm the Extron President of the ISSU, and we're going to get started by doing a quick overview, I guess, of what it means to be a member of the Quishtagano. And with us today as well is our returning officer, Nadine Toy. You might see her, she's there in Houston, so I might give her a few minutes, or if you're free there, Nadine, are you okay to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone. So excited to hear that you're all thinking about running for Quishtagano. Very exciting. I will be the returning officer, which means if you have any problems or issues with the campaign and just elections in general, you can always come to me about anything. I'll be there on the day of annual assembly and also on the online annual assembly, online part and the in-day part. So you can always come to me with any issues. And the email for the return officer is returnofficer@isu.ie. So I'm very excited to be doing this. I'm buzzing and cannot wait to see all the amazing campaigns and all the amazing stuff you're going to be getting up to over the next few weeks. Amazing.
Thanks, Nadine. So what we're going to do now first, I guess, is just a quick overview of each officer and their role, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Then we'll actually give you a bit of a background about what it's like to actually be a member on the Quishtagano, and then we'll head into breakout rooms so that everybody can kind of get a sense of each officer, and if there's a particular role you're looking to run for, you'll be able to talk directly to that officer. So I pulled up the website here, and we might just go off of that order, so that it's in no particular order. So we might start off with Owen Conley, who is our Rooney or secretary and also our interim disability officer. So Owen, if you want to come in about those two roles.
Sure. Hi guys, so my name is Owen. Just to start off with my main job, which is Rooney or secretary, main job of that is to organize the Quishtagano and to help in organizing meetings, just so you can get as many people as possible to make it to the meetings, figure out the time and venue when it's in person, but you'll get help with that from the staff and the Breakout. Beyond that, when you are actually in the meetings, you can obviously participate like a normal member of the Quishtagano, but you also take minutes of the meetings. So you have a record of what happens at the meeting and especially what important decisions are made. And you share that with other members of the Quishtagano and other people in ISSU, like regional officers and the monitoring and advisory committee. And then shortly after that, once the minutes are agreed upon, it's shared on the website. So it's mainly about communicating the work of the Quishtagano internally and making sure that it is transparent to everyone. And beyond that, you can just help out other officers where like I've gone involved in report, just really beyond the required roles in the Constitution. It's really just what you make of it. I've been filling the bare necessities of that role recently after the role has been vacant for a while. But the main idea there is basically what it says on the tin. That was a newly created role because the equality remit was very broad. So Saoirse rightly proposed that we make a disability officer specifically for this roles. So again, it's working on disability issues affecting second level students. There's a few advisory groups you should be able to get a seat on once you're in, and we'll nominate you to those, and that should be smooth sailing. Beyond that, it's just working on campaigns that you decide, basically. It's really what you make of it, but obviously there's directive policies to help out, and if you have a manifesto, that'll also inform it. There's also a disability working group that you can use to inform your work and get support, so that a lot of it is what you make of it, but those are the two jobs, and if you want to chat to me about either of them, you can go into my breakout room later, or just get in touch with me afterwards.
Thanks very much, Owen. And we're going to move over to Jack McGinn, who's our education officer next.
Hi guys, so I'm Jack and I'm obviously the education officer here. So education is probably one of the broadest remits on the Quishtagano, which can be a really good thing and it can be a really bad thing. Obviously, I'm not going to butter it up since ISU is an education organisation. You really have to share your remit, and that was something that was particularly hard for me to kind of wrap my own head about. But like everyone here is working towards the advancement of second level students in the education sector, which means that people are going to dip in and out of your role. And I think the best thing you can do about that is embrace it and use it as a positive, because everyone here is for the same thing. Now, education is a bit of a strange one some years everyone wants to run for it, and some years everyone doesn't. And maybe I think the best thing to start off with is talking about maybe the state exam situation and all that, because I think that was a kind of main thought for maybe education officers. It was a main thought for me. It's one of the main things about the union about maybe the last 3 years. So obviously, for the last, I think it was 2 years, the education officer has sat on the advisory for the planning the state examinations. Firstly, just to kind of maybe clarify, it's not set given that it's the education officer. It could technically be any officer. And when I came into it, it wasn't that, oh, Jack is going to be on the advisory group from day one. It was really a selection, and it was open-minded, and it's left down to the discretion of the Extron after maybe evaluating up who brings what to the table. So I wouldn't be set that you're going to get an advisory group seat, you're going to get this, you're going to get that when you're become any officer, really. It's not really how it goes, and you can't depend on that. And if that's your kind of mindset going into the role, I think it would be the wrong one. And that's something that I also had to learn, because when I came into education officer, I had a completely different view of what I'm actually doing. So that was just kind of maybe one to watch out for. Now, you still will be heavily involved in any state exam situation going forward, because you are the education officer. Now, you are the main spokesperson for education related things, but that can also falls with the Extron, who is the national spokesperson. They're the lead spokesperson for anything for the union. So for stuff maybe as big as the state exam situation, that has to be the Extron, because it is a huge deal, and they are the lead representative for the organization in that terms. Now, what I work a lot on is sort of leaving certificate reform, junior cycle reform review. So currently, anyone on my working group that's here would know that we're doing leaving cert applied reform. So last year, the education officer before me done, the senior cycle reform report, and this year I'm doing an LCA reform report. It's a lot about it's a lot more, how do we say, kind of office-y work. You're doing reports, you're evaluating stuff. It's not really this big representative role, and it might be for the last few years, but I really don't think it's going to be going into the future. So that might really benefit people. That's maybe what people want out of the role, but that mightn't be what others want out of the role. So like the biggest thing I hope you take away from this is, don't run because you think, oh, I'm going to be on meetings at Norma Foley, and oh, I'm going to be on this, because you mightn't. And it would be a shame if you ran and that's not what you get out of it. And I think lastly, just what I'll say is, you really get what you put into it. If you're prepared to give it your all and miss other stuff to be the education officer, I suppose this applies to any officership, well, then you will get a lot of reward out of it. You will get to do stuff that you dreamed of doing. But if you're kind of not putting your all into it and in and out every few minutes, well, you're just not going to get the results you want to see. And then when it comes AA time after your year, and people are wondering, well, what did you do with your year being the education officer? If you can't stand above something and say, well, this is what I've done and I'm really proud of that, it'll be disappointing for yourself. So I really would encourage anyone to just think it's not going to be this big meeting with Norma Foley, meeting with other education stakeholders, being on RTE News. It just won't be that going into the future. And it will be for others, maybe in other terms, but it mightn't be for the state exams. So I wouldn't rely on that. And that's just kind of the biggest thing I want anyone to take away from it. And if you're half thinking of education, do join the breakout room later so I can go through it in a bit more depth, because there's a bit of there's a bit of a few more tricks to it than it seems.
Thanks very much, Jack. So we're going to pass you over to Mohammed now, who's our regional liaison and support officer, or RLSO.
Thanks, Humor. So hi everyone. So I'll just kind of briefly go over my role, but I'll go into more detail in the breakout room if anyone's interested. But one of my main responsibilities as regional liaison and support officer is the overall coordination and support of the regional officer body. So we currently have 44 regional officers, so 2 in 22 regions. And as regional liaison support officer, one of your main roles are to support those regional officers whether that be with like press releases, with anything really. Regional officers will come to you for any support that they need. You're like their main point of contact on the Cuiste as well. So that could be press releases or helping them out with their regional project, which is something that I'm doing right now. So you're kind of always busy with doing something. And then regional council season, so that would be during October, November time. That is another very busy season for the RLSO because they're helping out regional officers plan 22 different events across the country. This year we had around 14 in person, and you don't have to attend all of them, but that was something I wanted to do, and I got to attend all of them. And it was probably one of the most rewarding experiences ever because you got to meet so many students at these events and kind of like educate them on topics that like they never knew about. That's kind of like one of the main roles as RLSO, and then you kind of work on your own remit as well. So whether that be like student council resources, or like implementing issue campaigns on a regional level alongside regional officers. So that's kind of like some of the tasks as RLSO I do. And then like recently I organized the regional officer training. So your role is really a lot to do with the regional officers and like supporting them and the overall coordination of the regional officer body. So that's my role.
Thanks, Mohammed. So next up we have our welfare officer, Dennis Lynch.
Hi, yeah, so the welfare role is definitely a very interesting one. Just like Jack said, it's really what you make of it. I think the main thing about welfare though is it's very centered around initiatives and projects. So these can be initiatives and projects that you do on your own with the union or with other organizations. You end up getting a lot of invites from other organizations to work with them on their projects as well. So that's the main thing that the role is focused around. There is a little bit of welfare policies within the union, and there's also the side of it of working on other officers' kind of welfare, making sure that everyone's doing okay, kind of considering welfare in decisions that are made. So in the Cuiste meetings, whenever there's a decision being made, you kind of need to think of the welfare aspect. And that kind of requires a lot of expertise in welfare. You need to keep an eye on the news and what's happening, what's big at the moment, that kind of thing as well, because every now and again you have to be on panels. Welfare is a very like broad and topical one, so it's definitely not as easy as it looks. You need to kind of keep up to date with everything. So another thing is what was I going to say? Oh yeah, you'll often be asked by regional officers and just other students to help them out with welfare projects or solving issues in schools. And beyond that, it's really what you make of it. One major thing that I found is you need to not fall into the trap of just raising awareness for things. It's very easy to kind of raise awareness for everything within welfare, but I think it's very important as well to focus on actual projects and initiatives that do make change. So, thanks.
Thanks very much, Dennis. Next up, we have the Equality Officer, Saoirse Exton.
Hello, everyone. I was a little bit late. Apologies for that. Wi-Fi and stuff. So yeah, Equality Officer. Well, I've been Equality Officer for the past 2 years. So like, I feel like this is a part of me now. But it's a very, very broad role. Like everyone else is saying, like there's a lot in it, and you can really do whatever you want with it, provided it falls within the realm of equality, whatever that means. So, you know, you can look at any form of diversity, intersectionality. You can tie it into your interests, you know, whether that's climate or economical or social. It's very, very broad. So it's really depending on what kind of an activist you are, or like what you actually want to achieve with the role. So yeah, you know, whether that's internal reform, it's a good role for internal reform, because you can be like, I'm a quality officer, I have the rating authority to say that that doesn't pass my test. So that's great. Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of things that you have to remember, and that's, like Dennis was saying, raising awareness is all fine and well, but unfortunately in this age of information, we have far too much awareness about things. And so it's much better. Sorry, my phone's notification sound is a frog, so I don't have a frog here. It does sound like that. I don't. But you know, it does. Words. What was I saying? Okay, so yeah. Another thing is, I'm currently working to try and somehow get ISSU involved with the department, but they don't like us. So it's really important that in this role, you know, you try to be, I suppose, just try to sort of put yourself into it. And like Jack was saying, put your all into it, because it is really important that with these things, you do have to have a level of dedication, and you do have to set aside a level of time, both to have a break from this, because it is a lot, but also to actually really work on it. One of the best things that I've done over the past 2 years is the accessibility guidelines. They're my baby. And basically what those are is thank you, Owen, for defining the department thing, so I didn't have to say that really long name. But the accessibility guidelines are basically, well, they're sort of self-explanatory, but they have like ways and how you can make documents and social media posts and all sorts of things, you know, good for everyone so they can read them and engage with them, and their screen readers can read them and all sorts of things. Now, obviously that falls under the disability category a bit more, but like I think one of the most important things with a quality officer is that you have to collaborate with everyone, you know, because if you're looking at, for instance, relationship and sexual education, like obviously that's very much related to the education role. Or if you're looking at something to do with, you know, climate justice, obviously that's very related to the sustainability role. Or if you're looking at disability related, or something to do with Guelga, you know, like there's a whole welfare obviously like is a big one as well. Like it's all very, very much interconnected. So it's really important to be a bit of a team player when you're a quality officer. And also I think to be really open, because the thing with a quality officer is you can never represent everyone that you're trying to represent personally. So, you know, there's always going to be some group that you cannot cover with your own identity. And so it's really important to, where possible, consult, or at least to take into account the kind of the voices that reach out to you and say, well, this is something that I want to work on. Because, you know, if you're cis, you can't speak for trans people without consulting them, and, you know, this sort of thing. And disability, like it's the same for disability officers. So, yeah, as Owen was saying. My brain is very frazzled, so I apologize. But I'm looking forward to talking to people. I'm like so excited to see who wants to like take my position after 2 years. So yes, yay.
That was great. Thanks so much, Saoirse. And let me just get the list again. So next is our international officer, Casper Bogalecki. Do you want to come in, Casper?
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone, and apologies for my late arrival as well. So a bit about my role. So as Emer introduced me, I'm the international officer, and that really is quite a broad role. Obviously, as the name suggests, there is a lot of international work involved. So on a daily basis, kind of a day in the life of me, I would be talking a lot with foreign student unions. So I would engage with our neighbours in the north, the SSUNI. I would also engage very frequently with the Spanish Students' Union, CNI, who are also a very active organisation. Then I would also take part in projects. So one of the main ones currently ongoing is Schools of Sanctuary, which has become ever more so prevalent and important in today's world because of the Ukraine crisis, the situation going on there, and the way that we will accommodate Irish students here in Ireland. So I was in a meeting for that yesterday, and there will be another one on Wednesday on how we can get resources for schools dealing with welcoming these students and things like that. So there is a lot of spontaneous work as such. There will be worldwide events and scenarios happening everywhere that you will have to respond to. But there is also a lot of, I suppose, domestic work here. You'd be working with the current asylum seekers and refugees living in Ireland. and making sure that they have a very welcoming place to go to in their schools, making sure that they feel supported, and ensuring that they do have all the resources they need to thrive in our country. Then I suppose there's a lot of helping individual students. So this is my real favorite part of the job is actually connecting with students on an individual basis, and seeing what resources they need, and providing guidance to them. And that would really be a vital role of mine as well. Then obviously, what I would be doing is getting involved in the likes of UNESCO's SDG 4 action group. So that involves the fourth SDG, which is for quality education, and it involves partners from around the world. I think there are 120 nations involved in this project, and it's a really long-term project on how we can get to reaching quality education by 2030. And there's a lot involved in that. I can speak to you all personally in the breakout room about that. And then there's obviously working with our partners, Nadine and Obesu, and the Global Students Union, Students Forum as well, my apologies. So there's a lot to it. It's a great role. There is traveling involved as well. I haven't, unfortunately, traveled yet in my role, but there have been opportunities. It's just that I'm in 6th year, and oftentimes it didn't work out because of the timing of exams, etc. But there are opportunities to do that too. But the main part of the role is obviously advocating for students both here in Ireland and abroad, helping wherever you can, and working on projects affecting refugees, asylum seekers, international students, as well as doing other things to help the Quistigano as a whole. Anyway, I've talked on long enough, and I'll talk to you all later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casper. And so we're going to move on to the Communications Officer, Quinton Kelly.
Hi, everyone. I hope you are all well. So my name is Quinton, and I'm the current Communications Officer here in ISSU. And basically, kind of in summary, what the Communications Officer kind of role looks after is all ISSU's media and our publications. So that includes stuff like the social media and making sure that graphics are made, making sure that it fits the accessibility guidelines, that it follows brand guidelines, and making sure that that content goes live and is accessible and reaches as many students as possible. It's about looking after all kind of forms of media as well. So looking at not only the social media side of stuff, but looking how we can further expand ISSU as a representative body, and ensuring there is clear communication, not only within the organization between structures, but also externally to stakeholders and our grassroots students as well. So basically, with the role, the other kind of side of it, you look after stuff like working with Quistigano officers on campaigns. So you really are collaborating with every single Quistigano officer quite frequently, especially if they're looking at launching a campaign or a working group. You are working with them on how that campaign is going to look and how our graphics going to be made and the kind of timeframes. It's a very organized role. You really do kind of have to, be able to make quick decisions, but also be extremely organized and timely in your work, and looking after stuff like promotional material and really seeing ISU like branching out and working with other stakeholders and expanding in terms of the media as well. So it's how in the communications officer role, you have complete creative freedom. Like there are, obviously you have to kind of follow certain procedures and guidelines, but other than that, you have this really unique freedom that is completely different to any other officer role, because you're less working on maybe policy writing and focusing more on the graphic design and visual representation. An image can say 1,000 words, and that's what's so important about the communications role, especially like the graphics that you make and put out there is probably the first thing that a student might ever see from ISSU. So it's important to show that level of engagement and really attract as many students as possible. I will say it is a role in the Quistigano that is full-time in itself. If you really want to commit to the role, it is a massive commitment, but it is so rewarding. Like the opportunities you get and the response you get if you really put in the work are worth every spare minute that you put into it. I will obviously delve into it a lot further in the breakout room, but in summary, that's the communications officer role in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Quinton. I'm actually a former comms officer, and Quinton just put that so perfectly. So well done. Next up is our Ifiguk Nagwelga, James Averaha. So do you want to come in, James?
Hi guys, hi Gachan, yeah. I just noticed there we have the closed captioning on, so the Irish will come out very funny on it, so keep an eye out for that. So yeah, I'm going to run you through a bit about what Ifiguk grading is. I'm just going to apologize in advance if I sound a bit strange or if my head is a bit funny. I'm currently in the midst of COVID, so I'll try and keep the brain fog to a minimum. But basically, Ifiguk grading is a role in which you're responsible for promoting the Irish language within the union. So you're responsible for representing students with Irish, students in Gaelcláistí from Gaeltachts, and students who have a general interest in Irish. And so you're in charge of liaising with them, representing them and supporting them. And then on top of that, you're also in charge of upholding and implementing the Irish language scheme. So within the union, we have a Scéim Teanga Néantas. And basically what that does is it lays out a bit more in-depth kind of responsibilities that the union has, not just for the Ifiguk Grading app, but for every officer. So things that every officer should be doing to promote the Irish language. And basically it recognises that the Irish language in the union is important to the students and to the general education body. But I suppose what I found very interesting about this role is that if you do have an interest in Irish language, and if you do have an interest in this role, and I would really encourage that you come, even if you have a slight interest, or if you speak any bit of Irish, I pop into the breakout room, because it's really a role that surprised me in terms of it's the kind of the routes you can go down. Because the truth is, in this role, you're actually never going to be operating alone, because we've built up over the years this incredible relationship with Connor Gaeilge, which is an organisation that I think if any interest in the Irish language you know about, you've heard of Connor Gaeilge, but I don't think a lot of us realise the amount of work that they do. And so we have this great relationship with them where they can rely on us when they need the student perspective. And so if you have a lot of ideas in your head about ways that you think the Irish language can be improved, but you're kind of thinking, well, I don't know how we can ever go about this, just know that between the union and Connor, you have a huge amount of support going into this role. And yeah, I mean, like the other roles, it's extremely collaborative. I mean, nothing you're going to be doing is ever truly alone. You have this whole team behind you. But it's a very fascinating role. I think if you have any interest in the Irish language, there's a lot of ways you can approach it. And there's been a lot of amazing work done, and there's a lot of more amazing work to be done. There's a lot of very exciting projects happening now, but yeah, sorry, I hope that made sense. There's a great word in Irish actually for brain fog, it's marvel. So I'll marvel arm. So thanks very much again. See ya.
Review James. So next up is our sustainability officer. So I'm going to pass you over to Salim.
Thank you, Emer. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I had to switch my phone. Windows crashed as per usual. My name is Salim and I am the Sustainability Officer for the Irish Second Level Students Union. Before we get into anything else, I want to quench any thoughts that this Sustainability Officer is a climate officer. Sustainability as a word refers to the process by which we reach our own needs without compromising the needs of the next generation. The UN have a very perfect list of ways to be sustainable. I'm sure you've heard of them. It's called the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. that ranges from no poverty to quality education, as Casper mentioned, to equality, to obviously climate action. That's one of the 17. I hate to be like a bit of a broken record box, but like a lot of what people said before, this is a very wide role. It means that you can approach this from whatever way you want. And if you want to take a look at, climate migrants is one way of looking at it, because that's a very big issue. If you want to take a look at it from the perspective of energy, in terms of like getting solar panels into schools, to transport, in terms of getting public transport to schools and stuff, there is a million billion different ways you can approach this role. And whatever ideas you can have, they can be tailored to fit the role. Which means that you have a lot of creativity. It's a very creative role. It means it demands a certain kind of ability to kind of to try and elevate sustainability, and out of the box thinking is something that is very helpful. ISU also sits on the Department of Education's advisory group for ESD. Now that is a lot of jargon to basically say that we hold a seat for an advisory group for education for sustainable development. So ISU at the moment is running a climate short course for junior cycle, which is basically a year-long little course for people who are doing the junior cycle rather. And it looks at climate change and looks at why it happens and the causes and what it looks like and what it means for the next generations and stuff. So basically, what that means for the sustainability officer is that you as a sustainability officer, will need to input into when the advisory group has meetings and just a minute, cool. And the day-to-day is really just sending a lot of emails. That's mostly the work that I do. It's not a very glamorous job. It's just clicking away, clicking and clacking away. Just sending emails and talking to stakeholders and stuff. But it's, as I said before, it's a very creative role, and you have a lot you can do with it. So if you're not really sure, make sure you pop into the sustainability room, and we can have a quick chat and have a look at your ideas and talk about my role even further. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Emer now.
Thanks very much, Salim. So I guess the next one is the presidential race. So the presidential race is split up into two sections. So there's Extron and then last Extron. So I'll pass you over to the last Extron now, Adam, and he'll tell you a bit about his role.
Thank you, Emer. So the last Extron position is kind of a broad position, like every officer has said. I think that's one of the key things to know when running for any of these positions is, number one, something that Saoirse said, which is you're going to have to be a team player. The Kishkano is a very tight-knit team, and you have to be able to work well with your other team members on absolutely every aspect of your role. And also your role is going to be broad. People are going to be dipping in and out of your remits and working on different things together. But as the last Uchtron, your main function is to assist the Uchtron in, I suppose, the day-to-day day-to-day running of the organization. So that can take many different functions. Some years the presidents work together on absolutely every aspect of the union. Sometimes they split up and work on different aspects. So it's how your relationship, how you work best with the Uchtron that defines what your role is most. So that's something that's core to the role, is developing a good working relationship with the Uchtron throughout your term and working on maintaining that. Aside from that, the last Uchtron position can dip into any sort of remit or role. Like, for example, I know some of the things, if there's other officers that need me to deputize or fill in for them for things, like I've attended department advisory group meetings on digital strategies on behalf of the comms officer. I've also attended education for sustainable development symposiums and stuff. So depending on what area you're needed in, you might have to hop into any different remit, which is similar to the Uchtron. So if you're running in this race, you're going to really need to know all the different aspects of the union, because you might be asked to jump in here, there, and everywhere. But that's also a good thing about this role as well, is that you have that freedom to work on almost anything you want. I know from the past couple of years, it's tradition that the last Extron will work on things like the vote at 16, lowering the voting age to 16, that campaign. They also work a lot on the constitution and the internal workings of the union. They also have a direct mandate to work on grassroots and membership development within the union. So there is really a broad range of things, and it's often focused on the internal aspects of the union. But yeah, it is broad. You are working closely with the Extron, and you might be deputizing and filling in everywhere. But yeah, your role is also, as part of the senior leadership team, you're working on a day-to-day basis to lead the union. You're looking at long-term goals, and you're making sure that the officers of the Kishkino are doing their work, and you're helping them to do their work. And you also might have to fill in on a national level, especially if the Extron isn't available. You have to step in and represent the union, stakeholder meetings, media, and stuff like that as well. So I'll hand it back to Emer.
Thanks, Adam. So I suppose a bit about the role of the Extron. My first bit of advice for any candidate thinking of running for Extron is to be prepared to win, but also be prepared to lose. Because if you, let's say, come second in the race, you are stepping into an entirely different role, and you need to be prepared to do that as well. And Adam put it really well there as well. So I think, like all the roles as well, it's a very broad role. No day will be the same. And Ruben will come in about it as well. He's our honorary president, but I think, be prepared to work as well, because, there are days where I might have a bit of a free day. And in that case, it's a bit of a break, but there are also days where when you are working 9 to 5, and that isn't, 9 to 5 going to fun conferences, that is 9 to 5 sitting down, answering emails, having calls with the Quishtigano, having calls with the secretariat, having calls with the board. So as the Extron, you'll also sit on the board of directors in a non-voting capacity. And you'll also work very closely with the secretariat and the last Extron in terms of Quishtigano management as well. So you need to be available at any stage where you may be needed to step in and assist a member of the Quishtigano and help them with the project. You may be asked to help the regional officers. You have to be available to any person within the union as their kind of liaison, and you'd be able to help them as well. So I think Adam put it really well. You need to know every aspect of this organization. To be a successful Extron, like you have to be prepared to do a lot of internal work. Whether that is going to meetings regarding funding, it's going to meetings about the function of the Quishtigano, it's meetings with the MAC, it's meetings with a lot of internal work. So you really do need to be prepared for that. You need to have a good knowledge of our constitution, have a good knowledge of our structures and how to best maintain those. And of course, you'll have an honorary president as well there to help you, as well as your last Extron. Then I suppose there's the fun part. You'll get invited to fun conferences with big stakeholders. You'll get to do a lot of media, but that's not everything, and it definitely won't be everything. So just be prepared for that as well. And I think Jack put that really well, in a sense of, your main remit is education, because the ICC, we are an education organization. So everybody here is working in terms of education, regardless of their remit. So you will work very closely with the education officer in terms of, leaving cert reform and things like that. But you'll also work very closely with other officers. I know this year I've worked very closely with the communications officer. I worked very closely with the Rooney and the Fukuknagwelga and things like that as well. So it also kind of goes where your other interests are. A piece of advice that I was given by our Extron is to find a passion project, because you will get bogged down with all the education stuff. So I know this year I worked heavily on gender equality. Former Extron worked a lot on kind of student council work and working with the regional officer body, and the Extron before that worked a lot on direct provision. So have that kind of interest as well, and like Adam said, you'll be able to really dip in and out of all remits, which is a nice part of the role as well. But you do have to have an interest in education. You have to have an interest in politics. Your role is very, very political. You will be meeting with political parties at least once a month, if not more, particularly the education spokespeople. You'll also, I guess, like a lot of the work you do will become very politicized as well. So you need to be prepared for that. And of course, you'll all be given training as well. So I suppose that's the main kind of bit of the role. It's definitely not as glamorous as it looks. It's really difficult actually, and it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of long nights. I guess to put that into perspective, like, you know, during the state exams, what you saw on the outside of the organization was, you know, this report, you know, national headlines, things like that. But behind the scenes, it was staying up until 4 a.m. writing a report. It was reading through 41,000 survey responses by hand with a secretariat member. You know, that's the reality of the role of Extron. And you need to be very, very prepared to do that. Now, hopefully there won't be another exams fiasco and nothing like that will happen, but you always have to be prepared to kind of step in when you're needed and to be that person. You know, you can't guarantee that that other people are going to do that for you. Like, you need to be prepared to do that. So I suppose just be ready to work and be ready to support the Extron if you don't win your race as well, because I think that's a really important thing as well. You know, you're running in two different elections. You're running to be the president, but you're also running with the possibility of becoming the last Extron as well. So just always have that in the back of your head as well, because I think that's really important. But I might pass you over to our Extron now very quickly if you want to come in.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna, my name's Ruben, I'm the Extron or honorary president, which means I was president last year. I'm just gonna cover some general things about as being a member of the Quishtagano, because I know there might be some of you that aren't sure which position you're running for. The first point I'm going to say is just to highlight what Emer said about how challenging the role can be. I think there'd be some very stark before and after photos of me and Emer's first days in the job and the days we leave. And like, yeah, it's a 9 to 5 role, but then there's plenty of nights where it's 5 to 9 after that as well. So the first thing I want to say is on the Quishtagano, you're a representative. So what that means is you are there to represent 600,000 students. It's very different from when you're in your student council or when you're in organizations, like you're there to represent 600,000 people. A very important thing is to know who is not your enemy. If you don't like certain parties, if you don't like certain politicians, if you don't like certain members of government, doesn't matter. Your job is to work with them and to use whatever you can to the absolute maximum to work with them. If you're a member of a party or you don't like a particular party, that's irrelevant of who you are in your capacity as a representative. You need to work to say, okay, we need to get something done. That's where the second part is, where like your individual personal opinion, that really you need to pack that up into a box and put it to one side once you come into the role. I know I would have been someone, we're normally as activists before we get into this sort of level, we're invited to these sort of focus group and things where the whole point is for us to give our opinion. You cannot do that here, and you need to be voicing well thought out logical policies based on all 500 member schools and all 600,000 students who you are there to represent. 400,000, my apologies. And that's something that's really important. The second part is, and I know it's going to get better, but I think it is important that we just sort of highlight the challenges here as well so that you're prepared. And you're not going to change government policy working an hour in the evenings after school. And that's something I want to just put out there. Like, if you want to create a lasting effect on government policy and on education and really affect change, it takes grit, grind, and just elbow grease. And there's no shortcuts around it. So you do need to be prepared to work up the hours, and the hours are there, and it's not just for president, it's across all of the roles, because otherwise it falls to just a couple, and then that's when it can get really difficult. And be prepared to learn. And I thought I knew a lot before coming into the role of Extron, and I feel like I had a lot of background knowledge, but one of the first things you need to be able to do is break that down and just learn again. And there'll be that support, there'll be that training, but you need to be ready to say, okay, I'm going to just absorb a lot of information coming in. And you need to have a level of professionality. You are professionals. You're going to be in the rooms with the people who are top of their field. You're going to be in the rooms with experts, and you're not going to be in there as young people. You're going to be in there as equal peers and colleagues. People aren't going to see you as the young person and the under 18 in the room. No, they're going to see you as equals. It's not like you're going in to see the principal. No, it's as if the principal is meeting another principal. You are on their level. And it's really important that, like we instigate a bit of an over prep culture, and like before you have a meeting, you're going to be prepping, you're going to be ready, and you're going to be at that level of, you know, you're at the top of the game. You are the chief representatives of students in this country. They don't get a vote in elections. We're the only voice they have. Now there's just a few minor points. The fun things, the media and the conferences. I've been to one conference. It was absolutely so much fun, but it was the only one I went to. And the media is great. People confuse it with getting change. It really isn't, bar maybe some awareness, but the real change is the other bits. And if you're in it for that, that's not what this is. And the second thing is, if you're here for credentials, I would strongly recommend you leave now. If you're coming here just to get something for your CV, it's not worth it. This is here because it's a platform from which you can really do so much. And then moving on from that, this is something that's really important. You're not going to figure out what you're going to do on the job. Anything you're going to get implemented, you're going to have to think now. So now's your opportunity to sit down and think, what am I going to get done, and plan ahead. Like, it's very hard because there's all this urgent stuff that comes in. So if you're going to have your plans done before you actually come into the role, and then just 3 small minor points I bring up, and I'll finish up, Emer. My apologies. You can do it in school. If you're in 6th year, it is doable. Like, don't let that put you off. And if you are determined, it will happen. It will be challenging. Don't fool yourself, but it can be done. Okay, yeah. Be excited. I know it sounds very dark in some of the things we've described. That's just to give you an understanding. Don't let that deter you. Be excited. You're going to have a platform and a position of legitimacy, a voice to do so much and implement so much great change. And you're going to do that from a senior leadership position that most people aren't going to ever have the opportunity to be in until their mid-30s. The platform from which you are given to affect change, and also the experience you will learn from that, is really what you get out of it. Yes, don't wait to be told what to do. Don't wait to be delegated to, and don't wait to be asked your opinion. If you want to change something, don't wait for the minister to ask, what do you want to get changed? It's your job to really push it. And it's not like we do have a secretariat, but we have 2 for an organization of well over 100 volunteers. And you're going to have to be able to really be able to lead yourself, have a real focus, and just get stuck in and get it done, and don't have an ego. That's really important. Like, that will break it all down very, very quickly. The last thing, and this is just something I in particular found it challenging, is emails and documents and submissions. There will be a massive amount of emails coming in and notifications, and you will have to answer them. You will not be working on a week-to-week space. And there are Christian meetings constitutionally once every 2 weeks. You'll be meeting in between then. You'll be doing work in between then. You'll be having meetings with stakeholders and responding to emails on a daily basis. And then it's an amazing chance to learn. It's an amazing chance to affect change, but it's not dandy either. Sorry, Emer, I hope that didn't run on too long.
No, that was perfect. And I think maybe just one final thing to say. While this is a volunteer position, in reality, it is a part-time job. For some officers, it is a full-time job. And while in essence, we can't actually call it a job, that is the time commitment that it needs. And I think everyone has described their roles really well. And you can, you'll see us all in the breakout rooms to ask, those kind of in-depth and specific questions. I'd encourage you to go to a few different breakout rooms. And if anybody has any particular questions or wants to arrange maybe a one-on-one call with any officers as well, that is our website, and all of our emails are there. So I'm going to pass you on over to the Monitoring and Advisory Committee. Just to note, for the MAC, you have to be either an elected ISSU school rep, a former officer, or a former working group member to run for the MAC. So I'll pass you over now to either Jamie or Beth, and they'll explain it. So whichever one of you guys would like to go first.
Is both of us okay?
Yeah, fire ahead.
Yeah, so basically the MAC is essentially there to hold elected officers of the union accountable. So that includes the Cuishicano, the ORB, and it really works to make sure that the ISSU's work is in line with the Constitution and the membership, and to support officers in the ISSU through feedback on a regular basis. So it's one of those roles, as Emer said, you have to have either been a previous Cuishicano officer, a member of the ORB, or an ISSU school rep. So all the nomination procedures for that are in the Constitution. But it is essentially focused on upholding, on one hand, so monitoring the work of the union, monitoring the work of the Cuishicano officers, monitoring what the ORB are doing, and making sure all of that work is in line with the Constitution, also producing these things called monthly reports, which is basically where the question lets you know what they've been doing, and as a MAC you come back and just say, okay, this is the work that has been done, and there's a couple of statistics and things in there, but in your handover that will all be explained. And then on the other hand, there's the advisory function, which was only added in this year, so it's still quite new. If you're on the MAC next year, you'll still have a role to play in fleshing that out and what exactly that looks like. But it is kind of providing advice on the work of the union and how to support officers in doing the work and the development of the union as well, with a particular focus on the constitution, directive policies, and all the documents that really place the membership's voice at the heart of the union. So I might hand you over to Jamie to talk about kind of more specifically about the work we do and also why you should run for the MAC.
Yep, thank you, Beth. So my name is Jamie, and I'm also on the MAC. Also, just to note, there is 5 elected members of the MAC. Beth and I are the 2 that are currently here, but there is 3 others who do some great work as well. Yeah, so I kind of just wanted to talk about some guiding principles, what the Monitoring Advisory Committee is really actually here to do, a bit more of the specifics. So we kind of just support the Cushta and the ROB. It's been extended to the ROB as well. Just as much as possible, because we can't interfere in the work of the Cushta and the ROB, it doesn't mean that we can't that elected members of the Cushta and the ROB can ask for our advice. We all of us have prior ISSU experience, and we can use this to offer whatever support you guys, the Cushta, elected Cushta, will need. We also kind of promise to remain neutral. We don't take sides, or we don't have any biases in any situations. And the MAC are always able to, there always people are always able to come to the MAC knowing that we won't favour, say, I don't know, one officer over another, or the Cushta over the ROB. We do always remain neutral in that sense. Yeah, I think that's everything on my part, Beth. If anything else you'd like to hop back in on.
Great. Is that everything, Beth and Jamie? Fab. Okay, so that's those are the 2 bodies anyways that will be electing the annual assembly. So I'm going to pass you over to Nadine Toy now, who's just going to give a bit of a breakdown about how the week will run, campaigns, things like that. Nadine, if you're there.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me all right, because sometimes these earphones are a bit shit. But basically, I think once campaign starts, we start ready, I suppose, start campaigning. So you just open up your social media accounts and work away. And obviously there is campaign rules as well, and you'll still be sent a copy of those rules once you put in your nomination letter and apply for Cushta and Know. So then once you have your campaign rules, have a read through them. They're fairly basic and fairly easy to follow, and if you have any questions on them, obviously feel free to reach out to myself or the Secretariat. We can give you a little bit more guidance on this. But the rules are fairly straightforward, and they're also just follow the rules makes life easier for all of us if we just follow the campaign rules. So there's no campaign to be done until the beginning of until the day that the campaign starts. So there's no social media and stuff like that there to be social media posts to be posted until don't get on the deed spots, and don't a word for the wise. No, but yeah, it's fairly straightforward. It'll be good fun, and as long as everyone's kind of following the rules, being a good sport, I don't see why it can't be the best crack ever. And I think it's going to be a great campaign process, and after that, it's even going to be a better election, and I'm really excited for it. I hope you start too. I know you probably left anything out there.
That's perfect, Nadine. Thanks very much. And you'll all be emailed anyways over the coming weeks with the actual, we'll say, in-depth logistics. So as long as you get your nominations in, you'll be all good, and you'll get all of the information from Emma, who will be sending out those emails over the course of the next few weeks. So I guess we're ready to move into the breakout room zone. If there's already,
yeah, just setting.
There's certain age bracket. There's no age bracket at all. As long as you are a 2nd level student, you're more than welcome to run, and you're we would love to see more diversity of age groups on the Cuishta Know. To be honest, it is very tailored. There's a lot of people, I'm going to say maybe 15 plus. We'd love to be getting in with those more age groups to be more representative. So as long as you are a 2nd level student, please absolutely do. We really encourage you to run. yeah, like Ruben said it there, like a 12-year-old could run and could be the best president ever. So I mean, absolutely, no matter what age you are, as long as you are a second level student, you're more than welcome to run. Are there any other questions?
If not, I have the rooms ready.
Yeah, fire ahead then, Owen, and just pop into any breakout room you'd like to, guys.
So just
Dean.
Yeah.
Dean, do you want to come in on campaigns, or do you want one of us to? Oh, you're on mute there, Nadine. We can't hear you.
She's not. It's her. No, she isn't. She's not on mute. I think it's her mic isn't connecting or something.
Okay. Do you want to take a second to try and fix that, Nadine? And
Oh God. Oh dear God. Okay, I'll take that for a second. Generally speaking, you back, Nadine? Okay, no, it's choppy as hell. Okay, generally speaking, nominations will close on the 8th. This campaign will start around the 16th. Oh dear God. And there'll be a change of mind deadline where you can change to another role if you decide to. Campaigning will be, I think, 6 days this year. So basically you'll set up social media pages. You can promote a bunch of things about, oh my God. And basically run it however you want. Yeah, I think that's working better now, Nadine.
I think so.
Yeah, and we're gonna have another info night a lot closer to the time where we go a lot more in depth on running a campaign and graphic design and stuff like that. But generally speaking, roughly a week where you can promote yourself on social media. We're gonna hold hustings nights closer during the week, where basically there'll be all the candidates in a race can get asked questions by delegates and just basically make themselves more well known. Then once annual assembly starts on the Friday, there is no campaigning from that point on. On the Saturday, we'll be holding elections. There will be some very small hustings for each election, so all the candidates can give a speech, get asked like 1 or 2 questions, and then the voting will happen. In between, really up to you how hard you go in for it. I think the election handbook is on the site. If not, we'll get it there. It should be somewhere. And we'll make sure that we send that gets to you, and that gives you a better outline on everything that you can be doing and like all the rules for that. And again, we'll be going much more in depth with everyone on that closer to the time. Great. Nadine, if you want to add anything that was working last time I heard you.
Yeah, I don't know if you can even hear me at all because I think I was so delayed there. I don't know if I'm back or not. It should be fine. Is it okay?
Yeah, it's good now.
Well, basically, I think, yeah, Owen said everything that I would have said anyways. So I think that's perfect. But yeah, I have nothing else to add. Of course, now my internet's working, whatever. It's all finished, but no, thank you for that.
So Louisa, I see your hand is raised there.
Yeah, sorry, just the manifestos. Do we do up those as a part of our campaign? Is that, this is oddly specific, is that during it before we get elected?
Oh yeah, so the manifesto comes, they actually have to be in before campaigning starts. So I would be getting those ready. We actually have a guide going up on the website, and the actual election kind of handbook with the guidelines for every manifesto and tips and examples is already live on the website. So you'll be able to see that now. So just, I guess, a brief overview. It has to be 500 words or less with I think it's 1,000 words if you're translating it. So we have the option for candidates to translate it into Irish or any other language as well. You know, a manifesto is just kind of like a brief overview of what your policies are, a little bit about you, and it's essentially like kind of like a one-stop guide for every candidate. You know, it is your promise to students. What are you going to do if you get elected? So if you have any specific questions, for example, if you decided to run for a communications officer and you had a question about setting up, I guess, like, you know, your communications manifesto, what are you going to do in that role? You can email manifesto@issu.ie and we'll send that email to the current communications officer and he'll be able to help you with that. So we kind of just set that up as a guide for students, and it works for every single position, the very same for Mac and for any position on the Quiz Chicken as well. So just to kind of reiterate, keep your manifestos to 500 words, and to kind of just have a brief overview of yourself, your experience, and then what your core policies are. Does that make sense? And I remember to have it in, I think the exact deadline is on the website, but I think it is the 15th of April at 11:59 p.m. because campaigning starts the 16th. Yeah, so is that okay, Louisa, or do you have any follow-up questions from that?
Cool, thank you for your help.
No problem. Are there any other questions before we end the call? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So just remember, you can email any position, any person for help, and you can also email the Dean, our returning officer at issu.ie if you've had any kind of specific questions for campaigning or anything like that. I'd really encourage everybody to reach out if you do have any questions. And yeah, like I suppose that's it. If you do have any other questions, please reach out like we said. And thank you all so much for coming today. We have clearly a very high quality group of candidates, which is so fantastic to see. So good luck to all of you that are running. And if you're still undecided and you have any other questions, please do reach out. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming, guys.